God it's Friday. Sorry for the delay. Got some little items here for our pre-show before we get started. We'll do some team previews today, some news and notes around the league. Russ, you start with the pre-show.
Yeah, I was just going to say Felix Hernandez pitched maybe his last game for the Mariners, and that was a good moment. You know, he pitched a perfect game for them. When they were good, he was good. When they were bad, he started to go bad. So fans really like him there, and it was a nice moment last night.
Yeah, and although I heard a stat where he's lost 15 of his last 16, or they've lost 15 of his last 16 starts. If I would have known that, we wouldn't have picked him up in our fantasy.
No, I know.
But
that's true.
Okay, I have to say now, I just saw this as a report from CTV News, and I wish this was implemented last June when I was coming back from the NHL draft in Vancouver. Apparently, Japan Airlines is one of the first airlines that has, when you're booking a ticket, a indicator of whether you'll be sitting next to an infant. They have a special signification on the seating chart to say whether you'll be sitting close to an infant. That was what I ran into on an overnight flight from Seattle to New York, where everybody on the plane was asleep, including the mother, except for this, I would say, 18-month to 2-year-old toddler who was sitting next to me. And as I was trying to, putting headphones on, just trying to like power through or just try to get to sleep, it was a little girl. She would not go to sleep. She was doing what 2-year-olds do, which I can't blame her. But I'm sorry if I was almost at the point where I was going to tap the mother on the shoulder and like, could you please like try to get her to go to sleep? Because, and I never ended up getting to sleep. I watched so much. It was a JetBlue flight. I watched so much satellite TV from Seattle to New York that I was caught up on every episode of NCIS, Chicago PD, and I can't remember the CBS Criminal Minds. Yeah, I watched like 6 episodes of those 3 shows. So, anything else, Russ, or I got one more thing?
Nope. Go ahead.
Okay, everybody knows watching this show my abhorrence to condiments. Now, after last night, and I didn't see this live, I just saw people tweeting this and putting it on Reddit, of Mark Letestu playing for Winnipeg, being on the Jets bench, and taking a mustard packet and putting it in his mouth and putting the mustard in his mouth in between plays. Like I don't know if I've seen anything more gross in my life than somebody doing that.
Well, we had this discussion about this yesterday, and somebody said it was supposed to help your stomach, but I was like, mustard's kind of harsh. I can't see it doing that.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what that was supposed to do, but that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we know about the ammonium the ammonia snifters that they use to clean up their nasal passages, and I'm sure like if you have a stomach ache, I'm sorry, Rolaids works. I've never heard of mustard being something that would calm the stomach. But yeah, I don't know if I would put mustard on anything in my life. And if I find out that there's mustard in something, I will not eat it.
Well, I mean, you're just warped anyhow. I mean, that's just not normal. But I just do think it's weird that a hockey player is using it.
Yes. All right. Light day today. We have a few news and notes. We'll preview 3 teams, maybe 4 teams, depending on how we feel. And then we'll take some questions in the chat. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, September 27th, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. NHL teams are in the final stages of their exhibition schedules. Most of the games, there won't be any I don't think there were any preseason games scheduled after Saturday, so most teams are playing their final game of their final 2 games this weekend. I know Toronto was playing their traditional back-to-back against Detroit,
Right.
and other teams are just finishing out the schedule. So you're going to see some of the final cuts. We've seen some veterans already placed on waivers. Guys like Carl Alsner got waived by the Canadians. Probably no one will pick him up because of his salary of over $4 million. So he's going to start the year in Laval. And I'm surprised, just briefly on Alsner, I'm surprised that Montreal did not buy him out during the summer, but it was probably because he had 3 years left on the contract. I think it's 3. I can't see, if they have to send him down again, them not buying him out after this year.
I agree. I'm a little blown away by it too, because you would think with all the injuries on certain teams that, yes, somebody would at least take a ride on him. Maybe Montreal would take half of the salary. I'm surprised.
Yeah, $4.625 million for this year and 2 more years. So that's, I am surprised that there hasn't been sort of a, and I always use this term and people find it offensive, a crap for crap deal like James Neal for Milan Lucic, where it's not working out someplace, and that maybe it would be better if he goes someplace else, and that team has a contract that is not working out for them. There were some interesting waiver placements yesterday. A couple goaltenders. Actually, one of them was just traded today. Antoine Bibeau got waived by San Jose, so he lost the backup job to Aaron Dell, and Bibeau was traded after clearing waivers, was traded to Colorado for Nicholas Malash. Now, Bibeau is going to report to Colorado's AHL team, but I think we mentioned it on a previous Buzzcast that their backup starting this season is Pavel Francouz, who I had to look him up. He's not. I believe he's like 27 or 28 years old. He's a veteran AHL guy.
Yep.
So maybe Bibeau gets a chance at the NHL as a backup to Grubauer, but the weight on Grubauer in Colorado is going to be quite severe.
It is going to be severe, but Bibeau's not going to get a chance. Like he's their guy. Francouz is their guy. Like they're raving about him. He's a right-handed catching goalie. I brought him up to you the other day because, to me, this is like a story. It's like I didn't even know this guy. I know he played a little bit in the AHL. And, after 1 year, he's coming up. He played like 2 games up with the big club. They love him.
Yeah, and somebody in the chat says, we're underestimating Francouz. I'm like, no, it's not that. I mean,
It's not that.
He played 5 years in the Czech league, 3 years for Traktor Chelobinsk in the KHL, and he played 49 games with Colorado in the AHL, 2.68 goals against, .918 save percentage. So good stats, and he had that year where he came over, got used to the different angles in North America, and now he played a couple games last year, and now he's getting a chance at the backup, and he's not a young kid. He's 29.
Right.
So I'm just saying, if it doesn't turn out, I think actually Bibeau has a better chance of being a backup in Colorado with an unknown commodity like Francouz than he does in San Jose, where they're paying Aaron Dell, I think, over $2 million to be the backup to Martin Jones. And I just think Bibeau might have a better chance of cracking the lineup there than he would in San Jose.
Right.
Yeah, Aaron Dell's making 1 point.
That's fair.
All right.
1.9. Okay.
Now, going back to Montreal here, the Canadians were shut out twice in a row by the Toronto Marlies and the Maple Leafs earlier this week, which, even though it's preseason, that brings joy to Leafland and much consternation to the Habs and their fans. Marc Bergevin has been taking a little bit of heat based on the play of Jonathan Drouin. There have been some trade rumors that Bergevin knocked down in his very colorful way by saying those rumors were apparently dreamed up by some guy in his basement in Toronto, having to throw shade at Maple Leafs fans. But honestly, Russ, I was skeptical of this trade when it was made a few years ago, Sergachev for Drouin, because we knew that the Canadiens were going to try to convert Drouin to center. That was an unmitigated disaster. And now, even though he scored, I think, 50 points last year, I think he didn't score a point in 16 of his last 18 games, which means, and they finished like 2 or 3 points out of a playoff spot, that if Drouin would have had even average production, they may have won enough games to make the playoffs. So that trade is coming back, or that trade is coming back to bite the Canadiens.
I can't put all that weight on him. There's a lot of other reasons. Just because he went cold, there's other players. I'm not going to put all the weight on that, and I'm not going to even say anything about the trade yet. I want to see what he does this year. Last year was the first year Montreal was even remotely good. Now this year, they definitely have a better team coming in. I got to see a little more. I'm not going to go that route yet.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I you know me, I'm quick to judge. So
I know.
And I had that opinion, like Sergachev, he's been good. I don't think he's been as great as people thought he was going to be when he was drafted in the top 10 a few years ago, but I still think he's a really good defenseman. And we know the Drouin situation in Tampa Bay, and you have to say, this is, people are always complaining. I know, like Toronto fans and other teams fans are always complaining about Tampa Bay being able to get these players in on more cost-effective contracts. Look at it this way: the two guys that raised a stink about their salaries in Tampa, Marty St. Louis at the end of his career, and Jonathan Drouin. What did they do? Mm-hmm. They traded both of them. They got rid of them. He says, okay, you don't want to conform. You don't want to take a bridge deal. That's fine. You can play someplace else and get your big money. And that's what happened. In all these deals, even Stamkos took a 5-year deal, but it was not an 8-year deal. But Tyler Johnson, Palat, Killorn, almost all of them, they took the bridge deal before the big money. And that's what Point ended up doing. He conformed to what Tampa has done in the past. Vasilevsky did the same thing. All of them took the bridge deal.
Well, they're only all doing it because they believe they could win the Stanley Cup.
Sure.
If this were a team they didn't think could win the Stanley Cup, they wouldn't be doing this.
Right. And Funky Cold Zadina in the chat says, well, that was Yzerman. And I'm like, I know, but Brisebois was Yzerman's assistant. He's still selling, the what you'd call the Lightning way, and that the Lightning way is you're going to get paid, but you're not going to get paid after your entry level contract. You have to take the bridge deal, and some teams are able to tell their players to be able to do that, and some teams can't get them to do that. And the ones that can't, like Toronto, who are paying guys coming off entry level 10, 11, 12 million or close to $12 million. It's going to be tougher for them because they're going to have to fit some of these guys under the cap, and it's going to be a little more difficult.
It will be.
Now, a couple other things. Nolan Patrick is on IR apparently with a migraine disorder. This is a former number 2 overall pick, somebody with high expectations in Philadelphia. Apparently, his family has a history of migraines.
Yes.
And right now he's going to see specialists. He's not making the trip with the Flyers to Europe. It sounds like I think they described it as week to week, Russ. So right now
it is.
His status is really up in the air.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is he's been skating, so he's in shape. So when he feels better, it won't take him long to get up to speed. That's the good thing for the Flyers. For migraine sufferers, this is a horrible thing. I know a migraine sufferer, and it could be very debilitating.
Sure.
I will also say, don't make the leap of faith thinking that this is like post-concussion, because it's not. It's a completely different thing. This is a different – there is I don't want to say it's a disorder, but this is actually listed as a medical condition, and there are specialists for just this condition. And clearly not everybody in life has post-concussion that gets this diagnosis. So in a way, it's not horrible. It's just, it's unpredictable. And that's the thing about migraines is, you would think it might be a week or two, but it probably won't be much longer.
As for other injury instances around the league, Russ, they can't not seem to escape it. The Arizona Coyotes may start the season without both their goaltenders. Darcy Kemper apparently was described as sore, but may not be out. But Antti Ranta is day-to-day with a lower body injury. I mean, he missed – three quarters of the season, and Kemper stepped in rather well for him. But this is a team that if they could avoid injuries, they might have a chance to make the playoffs. But last year they lost Dvorak, they lost Schmaltz, they lost Ranta. They're losing their key players, and that's an organization that doesn't have enough depth that they can compete if they lose these players.
Who's the number 3?
I don't even know who the guy is that they called up. I'll pull up his name here, but I've never heard of him before. Let's see. It is it's not Merrick Madsen. It's not they haven't. And the guy that they called must be on an AHL contract, so they may have called him up just to fill in.
Right.
But I mean, they're the guys who are signed who could get called up to play in the NHL are Eric Kallgren, Merrick Madsen, and Aiden Hill, who played in the NHL a little bit, I believe, last year. So
I mean, Hill will probably get the call. Although I like Madsen a lot, but Madsen, and he's not a young guy because he came from college. Right. I wouldn't be against bringing Madsen up.
Yeah, well, they're not going to have much of a choice.
Aiden Hill's the other choice, I think.
Yeah, so. Yeah, but I mean, ideally, right now, you're looking at two situations where they need Ranta or they need Kemper, and they may not have either one of them, and that's just disastrous for that team.
Yeah, this is every year now. I mean, we knew when Antti Ranta signed that contract that he's a pretty good goalie, but this is now getting to be a horrible contract and a really bad time for him with that team. Kemper at least had a good season last year, but now he got hurt. That happens. They're gonna come stumbling out of the gate again, I guess.
If you looked at the first round of the 2019 draft, and it's usually this in some of the preceding drafts, more than likely it's like the top 2 or 3 picks are going to make the league that year, and then everybody else is either going back to junior or Europe or college. This year appears no different. The Sabres sent Dylan Cousins back to Lethbridge yesterday.
You knew that was coming.
Yeah, Colorado sent Bowen Byram back to Vancouver.
That was probably a tough decision for him, but I think that's the best decision. I really like the kid, and he played fairly well in like the rookie tournament, but send him back. It's a safe move. At
this point, I know Kirby Dach got hurt for Chicago.
He's not making Chicago anyhow.
No, but he got hurt early in training camp is what I was saying. But at this point right now, I'm looking through the first round. I mean, Hughes is making it, obviously. Capo Caco is making it. Mort Sater is still with Detroit.
Well, those are the 3. Those are the 3 I expected to start the season.
Well, and the only other one, and I don't know if I haven't seen whether he's been sent back, and I know that Peter has been mentioning him, is that Vinny Heinola is still playing with Winnipeg.
Right.
So, and that might be due to the fact that obviously Bufflin is up in the air, but it would be surprising that a 20th overall pick makes it, unless it's just for the 9 games to fill in while Bufflin is making up his mind or getting back in shape. But
I mean, it could be, but he's a very mature kid. He doesn't make mistakes. I mean, at the NHL level, if he keeps it simple, he could probably do that. I saw Sider 2 nights ago, and he looked great. And I don't see a reason to send him back. I mean, he looked great on the power play. He looks poised out there. He didn't make any mistakes. He looks really good against good players. Like, he's playing against Crosby that night. I mean, so I keep him in there.
I saw him play at Traverse City, and he was one of the best. I didn't go to Traverse City. I watched it online.
Yeah.
And he was one of the best players for Detroit. I know that a couple of people in the chat were talking about, Veleno played pretty well, and he might have an outside chance of making it, but probably not. But Zadina has not played well for the Red Wings.
Yeah, I mean, there seems to be a longer transition for Zadina. I'm not going to be overly tough on him because I knew he didn't play defense. Mm-hmm. And I also knew that like his skating, while it was really good, little unconventional, at least I thought it was, but I still thought he had a chance to play in the NHL right away. He didn't. He had a good year in the AHL. If he starts off in the A again, I don't think that's any reason to panic. I actually think Yzerman's probably just erring on the side of caution, and then if he starts off hot there, then they can bring him up. But also, there's not a lot. If you put Zadina up there are not a lot of veterans to help him and shelter him, and that's the other thing you have to think about, and that's another reason why they may not be bringing him up is because or letting him stay with the team is because that team is not good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the smart thing is let him play in Grand Rapids, let him get mature, let him learn, let him get stronger. Don't expose him to a team that's probably going to finish in the bottom 5 of the league. I mean, that's smart to do. And then, maybe if you get good performances out of some of these veterans who have years left in their contract, Yzerman can get rid of them before the deadline. I wouldn't hold my breath about trading guys like Abdelkader or Glenn Denning. I mean, they're just
Green played the other night, and Abdelkader and Glenn Denning, but Green looked good, so there'll be a market for Mike Green if he stays healthy.
Now, I know that there was a little bit of consternation in Buffalo regarding Cousins being sent back because some observers believe that Cousins was playing better than Casey Middlestat, and yeah, I know, and that Middlestat has not been really that great in preseason. I know that Ralph Kruger is toyed in a couple preseason games of playing Marcus Johansson out of position. He's a winger, is playing him at second line center. And right now, the Sabres, after Jack Eichel, their weakest place is up the middle. Maybe the best thing for Middlestat is to go down to Rochester and play for 20, 25 games and get some confidence. Because right now, he hasn't played with confidence in the preseason.
Yeah, I mean that they'll make that decision if they decide that's what it is. It's not the worst thing, but yeah, to say hey Cousins should stay because he's playing better than Middlestat. What does one have to do with the other? It has nothing to do with it. There's no correlation there for anything. They don't play the same position. Tell me what the correlation is there.
Well, I mean, I think that they see Cousins as a potential number 2 center behind Eichel, and I'm like, well, Cousins is more of a winger than he is a center.
He is. He's a winger, and that's my point. He's not playing center.
Yeah,
at least not in the early part of his career. No way.
Now, we'll just mention this about the Leaf situation, and then we'll start our team previews tonight. Basically, it's the Toronto Marlies and fourth line candidates and bottom pairing candidates in Detroit, and then they're going to play their close to NHL lineup tomorrow in Toronto. Rasmus Sandin has played, I believe, and a lot of other people have believed, well enough to make this team on the bottom pairing. The interesting thing is, Russ, in a game where you would think they would want to just give him significant ice time to see how he plays. He played 10 minutes. He played protected minutes against Montreal. And in a preseason game, they played Morgan Rielly 29 minutes. Now tonight, it's Sandin and Marincin playing with a bunch of guys who are probably going to play with the Marlies. So they're probably going to play 20 plus minutes. But you have to find out whether this guy can play unprotected minutes if he's going to make the NHL, even as a bottom pairing guy, wouldn't you think?
I would think, but again, I guess they want to isolate certain guys and give them crazy minutes. I would never want to play Morgan Rielly 29 minutes. The Flyers played Provorov 27 minutes. Why are you playing these guys so many minutes in preseason? Right. You can't do that. It just doesn't even make sense. So I'm definitely against that, but yeah, I told you it wouldn't have shocked me if Sandy makes the team, and it won't shock me if he gets sent back. I think he's right there on the cusp anyhow.
Well, I'll just say this. If they he's definitely one of their 5-6 best defensemen in training camp. Whether they don't want to start the clock, whether they want to play him less than 40 games this year, so they have an extra year of protection in terms of unrestricted free agency, whatever. I mean, you can do that, you can't do that. If that's the plan, fine. I think he's one of the 6 best defensemen. But if you're going to send him down so you don't have to put Ben Harper, Justin Hall, or Martin Marincin on waivers, give me a break. Those guys are a dime a dozen. They're nothing. I mean, I'm not saying that the Martin Marincin is a flawed player. Ben Harper is immobile. Jordan Schmaltz has not played well. Justin Hall sat most of the year. who cares if you lose one of them on waivers? It doesn't matter.
It might matter to Dubas. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. But that's where the shell game comes in, and that's where maybe Sandin doesn't start the year with them just so they don't lose anybody, and then the first injury he comes up.
Yeah,
maybe
and I think if Liljegren had played better in training camp, he would have had one of those spots because he's waiver exempt, and he's a year older, I think, and he's burning the first year of his entry level this year, one way or the other. So, okay, all right, let's get started on the preview. Start with the Ottawa Senators. This should be fairly short and sweet. I'm not going to slam the Senators because they were one of the worst teams in the league last year. Their ownership is one of the worst. Their owner is one of the worst owners in professional sports. He's a distraction to the team from the team. He can't get a building built in Ottawa. I think the best thing about this team is the talent on the ice.
Yeah,
they have I
think that's fair.
A lot of good young players. I think DJ Smith is a capable coach. He's a rookie. I think it goes along with this being sort of a developmental team. They brought in some veterans, mostly from Toronto, Innes, Connor Brown, Hainsey, Zaitsev. They will provide, leadership and structure for some of these young guys. But Russ, I look at, you've got two of the best young defensemen, one in Shabbat, who they just signed to an extension, and Eric Brandstrom on the blue line. You've got White and Kachuk and Formanton and Batherson, and you can keep going. They have tons of talent up front. This team will be better in the second half as these guys gain more experience. They're not going to be a playoff team. They may not get out of the bottom 10, but this is what they're doing with these young guys, and it's a smart developmental way to go. They're not going to be a playoff team, but I think they could be good later on in the season.
Yeah, if these lines are right, if you've got Kachuk, White, Connor Brown, Ennis, Anisimov, Batherson, Duclair, Tierney, Ryan, that's pretty strong. Although I don't know why Tierney would be on the third line. I would put him ahead of Anisimov because Tierney had an amazing year last year. But either way.
I think, honestly, what I think it is, I think they can trade Anisimov at the deadline, and they want to build up his offensive credentials.
But their top nine's good. Shabbat, Zaitsev, Brandstrom, Hainsey, Borowiecki, and DeMello. That's where they fall off a cliff a little bit. I mean, DeMello's pretty good, but still, they have three decent defensemen. They're still young. That's where they're going to get hurt. They're going to have turnovers. There's other teams that are just going to kill them on matchups. So defensively is where they're going to get beat.
Yeah, and they've got guys who, they may end up trading at the deadline. I mean, Hainsey could be a rental, but I think they probably want to keep him around as the veteran guy. Craig Anderson could definitely be somebody who gets traded because they have Anders Nielsen and they have is it Gustafson? Philip
Gustafson.
Yeah, if he plays well in Belleville, and he struggled, I know, last year. But if he plays better this year, they'll probably want to give him a shot later on in the year to see how well he can play at the NHL level. But I this might be Anderson's last year. I don't think they're going to get sentimental about Craig Anderson in terms of trading him if there's a team close to the deadline that needs a veteran goaltender that thinks they're a goalie away from being a contender, and maybe he wants a chance to one last kick at the can before he retires. I don't even know if he's retiring, but I would think being in his mid-30s that there's
but
not.
But you think he should retire? That's what you're saying. Like you think he should? No,
retire. I honestly think that he's been abused by that organization the last few years because he's faced the most shots in the NHL. If he was with an actually good defensive team, maybe his career would last a few years longer. But if he has to stay there, I don't know if they'll re-sign him because their ownership right now is so cheap, and they may want to move to younger, more inexpensive goaltenders. So one way or the other, I think this is his last year in Ottawa. I think they're going to just try to get value for him on the trade market before the deadline.
No, I think that's fair, and neither of us think they're a playoff team. I mean, that's obvious.
No. Now, switching to Philadelphia, I mean, we've chronicled the number of changes. Kevin Hayes, they signed Provorov, they bring in Niskanen. They stay with the same goaltending tandem from the end of the year with Elliott and Carter Hart as the number one. They have Van Riemsdyk and Giroux and Voracek. I mean, there's definitely an upgrade during the season, but some of the moves were questionable. They brought in a whole new coaching staff. I just don't know whether they're a playoff team or not. I think they're borderline. I think they're on the bubble. They're going to need some breaks. They're going to need Carter Hart to stand on his head on some nights. I'm not sure. I mean, I put them in that mix in the wild card with the Rangers in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, there's going to have to be a lot of sort of upgrade in performance from a number of players for Philadelphia to stay in that area and not drop out of the race.
Yeah, it's interesting because what Flyers fans are focused on is, Frost is hurt, so I'm going to guess he does not start the season with them. We'll probably hear that soon because coming off a groin, you're not going to fly him to the Czech Republic.
They sent him to Lehigh.
Okay, so that's done. Farabee, they're on the fence about. Fletcher already came out and sort of defended Chris Stewart, which, again, I told you again the other day on the show. I thought he was going to make the team just because AV would like him to be on the roster, especially if they need to sort of throw out a tough guy just to kind of get things rolling overseas and early in the season. So it doesn't shock me that he makes the team. I think Turinsky is going to make the team, though.
They'd have to sign Stewart, right? He's still on PTO. Okay.
They'd have to sign him. I think Turinsky could make the team, though, and that's another big body who could actually do something for them. The line combinations will be interesting. They've been getting good response from like Hayes with JVR, so maybe you'll see that. I think you might see Hayes, JVR, and Voracek, and then Konechny, Giroux, and who am I leaving out? Couturier. Thank you. And I think that's the way you're going to see their top six roll out.
Well, that's a pretty big second line, big lanky.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
and I think if they're on the second line like that, it's a good change of pace. I think that's a way to put it. And like I said, Hayes and JVR seem to hit it off a bit. So that wouldn't shock me.
That provides a lot of matchup problems having, three guys who are 6'3" or 6'4" taller. I mean, that could really cause some problems with teams like the Islanders. So I don't think are particularly deep after their first line. I mean, I think they're okay, but they're not great. And New Jersey is not deep right now, so that would provide a bit of a matchup problem.
And I know fans were liking what they saw at a Lindblom in the top six last year, but they got a lot of players now. I don't know if you're going to see him in the top six this year. I'm not sure.
I think obviously the determining factor will be how well Carter Hart handles the default of being the number one goaltender this year. It's all on him. Brian Elliott is not going to be your starter. If he is, the season's a failure. Right. Carter Hart's going to play 55 to 60 games.
Not 60.
Right. Well, under 60, but in that area, 50, 55.
52 is the mark. That's the mark they want to hit.
So that would mean 30 for Elliott.
Right.
And and right now Toronto wants to play Anderson 55 and Michael Hutchinson 27. But do I believe that's going to end up happening? No, because Babcock is going to play Anderson. If he doesn't trust Hutchinson, he's going to play Anderson more. And I mean that AV is going to play Hart 60 games if he thinks he can get into the playoffs.
I don't think AV will do that, knowing that he's a young goalie. But never say never. I don't think he'll do that, though. I don't. Now,
I don't think Philadelphia is in the top three in the Metro. I think Washington and Pittsburgh are definitely in that top group, and then the third team could be any one of a number of teams. I have them as a bubble team, Russ. Where do you have them?
They definitely are a bubble team because, like, when you start looking at the bottom six, like I was saying, we start with like Lindblom, and then you go maybe Lawton, maybe go Farabee, Ruffle, and maybe you go, I think it's going to be Tworinsky and Stewart. But the problem is then you got to get another center in here. I don't think you really want to put Farabee at center. So that means Bunnaman could make it even over a Farabee, which wouldn't shock me because they need the center. So maybe you put Bunnaman on that fourth line.
We have some breaking news here. Vince in the chat just tweeted it or just put it in the chat, but Darren Drager just posted about a minute ago. Patrick Laine has come to an agreement with the Winnipeg Jets.
All right.
2 years at $6.75 million, which is the same cap hit as Braden Point on a 3-year deal. I mean, okay, the Jets get it done. I don't think that's out of the question in terms of salary, but only the 2 years. What do you think, Russ?
So 2 years, what was the amount?
6.75.
Yeah, I mean, that's boilerplate now for these guys. So Patrick Laine better hope that he picks his game back up because otherwise he's going to get killed on his next contract. And by killed,
yeah.
I mean he's not going to get even close to $10 million.
Now, this is the same template that the Jets followed with Trouba. 2-year bridge after the 3-year ELC. And then if he wants, he can go to arbitration 2 years in a row. He can go to arbitration, accept a qualifying offer, and then he's a UFA. So More than likely, if they don't get him signed to a long-term deal after this 2 years, Laine is paving his way out of town. What I'll be interested in, it's not out yet, and we'll probably find out after the show, is how this is structured. If the second year, right, like Stuttering Guitarist just said in the chat, if the second year, the AAV on the second, or if the salary on the second year is, say, $9 million, and then the qualifying offer is, say, 9.9, then you're talking then you're talking a problem here because I don't know if they want to pay him that much, and maybe it forces them to get a long-term deal done before it gets to that point. So now
it's going to depend on his play. Like if he's going to be a one-dimensional guy, then he needs to score 40 goals every year.
Yep. Now we have only 3 RFAs left: Rantanen, Connor, and Julius Honka. Honka is probably going to get traded. At least that's been the speculation recently. It sounds like I saw some chatter online yesterday that it's getting closer with Rantanen, but I have not heard anything on Connor. But now Cheveldayoff can focus completely on Connor now that he's got Laine done.
Yeah, he'll get Connor done. I mean, I think he just needed to get Laine done first. Connor will make a little less, so he'll probably make 6.25.
Well, I actually think they want to get Connor signed long term.
Well, they'll try, but I mean, if they can't, then they'll do the same thing so they could kind of move on with the season. Just to finish out the Flyers, so I was just looking at a video of Farabee. He gets scoring chances. He couldn't even score in the shootout though against Lundqvist. He might still make the roster, but again, I worry like you put him on there, and then what if he's still going to be snake bitten? So that's that's the worry.
Do you want to put him on the roster and have him play fourth line or third? I mean, third line minutes, that's fine. But if it's fourth line,
he could play third line minutes. There's a spot there.
Right.
But he's not showing that he could score yet at the pro level.
The third team is the Pittsburgh Penguins. They made some big changes over the summer. They traded Phil Kessel, which obviously we've been talking about for a couple of years, which was eventually going to happen. And that Rob Rossi piece with Malkin would basically telling everybody that nobody wanted to play with Kessel, that Malkin didn't want to, that Crosby didn't want to, and that's one of the reasons why he ended up on the third line, and that Sullivan didn't dig his idiot savant, hockey savant way of playing. Now that's Arizona's problems. They get Galchenyuk in that deal. They moved Oli Mata. This is a team that's changed a little bit, but when it comes down to it, Russ, they've got Crosby, they've got Malkin, they've got Gunsel. Letang had a bounce back year last year, and if Matt Murray, and this is in big quotes, if Matt Murray can stay healthy, then they would be in a pretty good situation. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they're in a pretty good situation. I just watched them play the other night. Murray played the entire game. He looked great. He was completely locked in. And so that's what you want to see out of Matt Murray. I was just watching Penguins practice here, and I got to tell you, and I watched the game again the other night. Malkin looks great. He looks more engaged. He looks fitter. I think they're going to have a big year out of Malkin, and that's why for all the people expecting them to take this step back, if Malkin has a normal year, like if he gets 115 points or something, you know what? That could solve a lot of problems.
Well, I think he wants to stick around. He's got only 2 more years left in his contract after this year. He may want another deal. So if he probably devoted himself to getting fit, which a lot of players do, they take advantage of the fact that in their 20s they can eat anything or drink anything and do whatever, and that their body is just going to do what it does. And then in their 30s they realize they have to take better care of themselves, and that's a situation where they're trying to hold on. And he's not an old guy. He's the same age, I believe, as Ovechkin. It's just a question of whether he'll stay in the NHL longer than Ovechkin. We talked about Ovechkin leaving.
Yeah, I think he will. And look, you can't eat Permane Brothers, 3 times a week. You can't do it. So, but I do think I watched Gensel. Gensel looks great. So and I think Rust is hurt right now.
Yeah.
So, but he'll be back. They still have enough. They still have just enough. Is it like great? No. Could they be a wild card? Yeah, they could be the wild card.
Yeah, and their defense is still a little. I mean, Schultz will be back, but he's had trouble staying healthy. Dumoulin's been pretty good. And I know the analytics crowd hates Eric Branson, but I think as a 4-5, he's not bad. There have been rumors out there about them trying to trade Jack Johnson. I give the award for stupidest contract last year to Jack Johnson and Jim Rutherford for that 5-year deal. I don't know what they were doing. But now he's got 4 years this year and 3 more years left in a contract. And he, at times, I think he was a scratch in the playoffs at times. So, I mean,
yeah.
But Marcus Peterson was a good acquisition from Anaheim, but they're not as deep on defense as they once were.
No, but Peterson had another good night the other night. What you're saying is true. Dominic Simone did really well again the other night. He's another player that they sort of brought in last year that I think he was a guy from their own organization who got promoted. So he's fit in pretty well. They have enough. I'm not worried about the Pittsburgh Penguins. So I got a couple of minutes if you want to take a couple questions.
Yeah. All right. We'll do some questions, and let's see here. Ask some questions in the chat, guys. I will scan through just to Funky asks, is Tristan – yes, he always asks questions, so he always go first. Is Tristan Jarry a backup goalie option for the Leafs? That's if they put him on waivers, and
right.
I don't think they'll put him on waivers. I think that they'll
do something like Mike said. Something will happen.
Yeah, he'll go on IR, or somebody will go on IR, or maybe they make a trade. But I don't think they're going to give up on a guy who was a second-round pick. He was as much thought of as a prospect as Matt Murray was a couple years ago. So
and he was listed the backup the other night when I was there. So
right, I mean, there's a better chance that Casey DeSmith sneaks through waivers. I believe he's got. Casey DeSmith has 2 more years after this year at $1.25 million.
Oh, okay.
Nobody is going to claim that on waivers because you're claiming a 3-year contract. So if they want to get away with, having 3 goaltenders and maybe bringing him up every once in a while or whatever, they could do that. But I don't think Jarry is going to be traded, or I think he's probably going to end up being their backup. And Chestnut said, any updates on Connor Rantanen or Honka? I mean, like I said, the only thing I heard was Rantanen and the Avs were getting closer. I'm sure they want to get it done before next Wednesday. Connor, it sounds like that the Jets want a long-term deal, and there's some, I've heard that, 6 years would be what they're trying to target, but it's a question of how much they want to spend. They have a ton of cap. They had a ton of cap space because they saved it up to sign these guys. Now with Laine locked up for 2 years. Now they know how much they have, and they actually have more to work with Bufflin on suspension. But the thing is, they can't spend that money until they really know what's going on with Bufflin. So I think they probably ask him to make some sort of decision on what he's going to do fairly quickly. Honka, he's going to get traded, but I have not heard where or for what. So
yeah, I don't know either.
Let's see here, one or two more, and then we'll
one more.
Okay. We already answered the Nolan Patrick question. Any youngster, 100 Deets asks, any youngsters really standing out, positive or negative? I know you mentioned Sandin recently. Anyone else? I mean, you're not asking a specific team. I'll say this: Buffalo, Victor Olofsson is probably going to start the year on the number one line with Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart.
And I think Carson Twarynski will make it for the Flyers.
Yeah, which means Olsson's going to take the place of Jeff Skinner while Skinner moves down to the second line, and if they play him with Hansen, or if Middlestad's the number two, he will provide a little bit of support for that second line center, which is a little weak. So, okay, we're going to end the show here. Thanks, guys, for watching. We will be back on Monday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz,